Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We'll start with a short introduction. I'm Doron Guest, Cybersecurity Chief Marketing Officer, and I'm very excited to be here today. We have an amazing audience tonight, and we're here to discuss Industrial IoT and Cybersecurity with Cybersecurity's very own VP of Corporate Development, Alon Saban, alongside amazing experts who joined us, including Irene, Petrick, Nease, Hackbarth, Çağatay. Could you help me with your last name, Çağatay, please?
Çağatay Büyüktopçu.
Thank you. Arvin Rao, Rafael Zanini, and Nishita Palkar. Thank you all for joining tonight, and thank you for being patient until we started. We'll start the webinar with a short introduction by Alon Saban about industrial IoT market and cybersecurity challenges, and then our panelists will each get the chance to briefly introduce themselves. We have a very interesting evening tonight. After the introductions, we're getting to a bit deeper discussion on everything related to industrial IoT, including challenges and cybersecurity threats and challenges and solutions in the market. As usual, we'll leave 15 minutes at the end of the discussion to answer Q&A and questions from the audience. So feel free to add any question you might have to the chat or to the Q&A part in the lower part of your screen. So, and we'll get to that at the end of the discussion. And I think it will be just the right time to get started. Alon, if you don't mind, would love if you can give us a short introduction to our discussion tonight, and we'll take it from there. The mic is yours, Alon.
Thank you, Doron. Thank you very much. First of all, guys, I want to thank you all for joining and spending your precious time with us here at Cybersecurity discussing industrial IoT. Everyone will introduce themselves, but I am honored really to be part of this team. So thanks again. A few words about myself. Alon Saban. I'm doing corporate development at Cybersecurity. At the past, I was at the IDF, Elite Cyber Unit, the defense side of the house, so 21 years. I did both crypto and cyber projects, operations, and all that comes with that. So that's me. Maybe when we discuss about industrial IoT, and I want to do it real short because we have so much to cover today, and I want to hear your guys and not me speaking. I think one thing that can be said about industrial IoT, that it's a fundamental capability. We can see it everywhere. We can see it in the health sector. We can see it in the industrial manufacturing, transformation, critical infrastructure, you name it. It's not only about the industrial part of the art, which means controlling the different aspects of machines, but it's about creating the data and about leveraging and enabling analytics and more capabilities over the machines themselves. And from the security side of the house, I think it's a two-bladed sword. Like any good technology, it introduces wonderful sets of capabilities and a new set of threats and attack vectors that can and actually being utilized by threat actors and hackers from all of the spectrum around the world. There are high-profile incidents you can think of, like Stuxnet, Colonial Pipeline, which was actually a ransomware attack. This is the attacks that you probably heard of. There are many low profiles, incidents, and attacks that are being introduced throughout the years, and we can see it. So the OT plateau, as part of this technology, is actually becoming an attack vector by itself. Now, we're not going to talk only about security, though it's my favorite topic. We're going to address three main aspects. First of all, what is the current status of industrial IoT today? what are the challenges, what are the threats, and how can we solve, and what are the practical ways to move forward with this kind of technologies. So guys, I really kept it short because I want to hear you guys talk. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a pleasant talk. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan, for the introduction. And I would like to hear more from short introductions so the audience can know a bit better our panelists. Irene, if you can, I would love to hear about you and get your introduction to the audience.
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm Irene Petrick. I'm a Senior Director of Industrial Innovation at Intel. I've been at Intel for about a little over 7 years now, but I've spent all of my career really working with manufacturers and manufacturing companies and the technology companies that support them, looking at their pain points, looking at their challenges, and looking at the opportunities that digital technologies can bring to them.
Thank you, Irene.
I kept it short and sweet.
You definitely did. Thank you. Lynn, yeah, you can go next.
Sure. And let me make sure my mic is working okay. Can you hear me all right?
Perfect.
Fantastic. So I'm Lynn Nease. I'm the Chief Technologist for IoT and HP Enterprise, and I work in our advisory and professional services business unit, complementing, the infrastructure and technology businesses we have. So I spend a lot of time both helping HPE think about our strategy towards this emerging area. I'm going to call it an emerging area, even though it's frequently quite old, as well as I spend direct time providing strategic consulting for many industrial customers.
Thank you, Lynn. Nishita, we would love if you can go next and introduce yourself.
All right, doing the mic check like everyone else.
Yeah.
All right. So hi, I'm Nishita Palkar, and I am Director of Product Management for Emerson's industrial computing business. So I spend a lot of my time on edge computing and the hardware and the software technologies across the OT stack that go into enabling that. So I also work primarily in manufacturing across the process, hybrid, and discrete verticals. And I'm very excited to be here today to talk to you about one of my favorite topics.
Thank you, Nishita. We are also very happy to have you with us. Next can go Arvind, if you can introduce yourself. Now we can also see you. Perfect.
Yeah, thanks, Doron. Happy to be here. Arvind Rao, Vice President of Industry Solutions at Rockwell Automation. So I think most of you know Rockwell is a leader in both automation and industrial software and information. And basically my focus is in building solutions for different industry verticals. So whether it's discrete, process, or hybrid, in really leveraging our both hardware and software portfolio to deliver vertical solutions for our customers. Been with Rockwell about 8.5 years. The role before this, I actually led our IoT and MES product management groups globally. And I have extensive experience in manufacturing and in plant operations.
Thank you. Looking forward to hearing more from Irene as we continue in the evening. Rafael, would love to hear your introduction.
Yeah. So thanks, Doron. So welcome everyone. I'm Rafael Zanini. I'm working for Siemens Digital Industries here in Nuremberg, Germany. I'm currently the AI Chief Product Owner for our industrial AI portfolio. And I've been working for past 16 years with many industrial customers, working with solutions for discrete manufacturing processes and also process industries. And today we are really bringing different technologies really to the shop floor to enable our customers to use industrial AI applications integrated into their automation systems, also with our industrial edge platform. And it's a pleasure to be here with such great panelists.
Thank you, Rafael. And last, Çağatay, I would love to hear your introduction.
Hello, everybody. I am Çağatay Büyüktopçu. I am head of IoT Cybersecurity of Arcelik Group. Our team is responsible from designing the related cybersecurity infrastructure of the embedded devices, edge devices that our consumers are using in their homes, and the iOS Android mobile application that is used for controlling and monitoring these devices. And finally, the related cloud services that are actually responsible from all of those domains. Today, I will try to contribute about the IoT security side of the domain. Thank you.
Thank you, Çağatay. And without any further delay, we'll jump right in. We have a few topics to cover today. And I was about to say tonight, but as I see these people from all over the globe, I think so. It's we have good topics to cover in the morning, in the noon, and in the evening. So we'll have to customize it for everyone. So we'll jump right in. The first topic I would like to cover is talk about industrial IoT market technologies, and be kind of start with kind of an overview. Rafael, if you can start, I'd like to ask you, how can industrial IoT enable Industry 4.0? If you can take that.
Yeah, sure. I'll be glad to take that. So when we start talking about Industry 4.0, it's actually not such a recent term. It has been, introduced also coming here from Germany and many different places. We are proposing the whole fourth revolution, right? And when we think about industrial IoT as one of the key technologies or trends to enable Industry 4.0 revolution, we have to think about not only as interconnection capability, but really from the point of view of how do we manage those whole assets that are interconnected through the internet, right? So when we are talking about the future perspective of industrial IoT, it comes with challenges not only on how do we create a complete new autonomous factory where machines are all connected, to the cloud and everything is flowing from the shop floor to the cloud, but really think about all the processes that actually have been established there for ages, and that has to deal with how do we handle machines, devices, how do you handle shop floor protocols, how do we handle operator using such kind of technologies in a secured environment inside your factories, and how to make sure that such communication that are flowing to enable new applications with Industry 4.0 and smart manufacturing are also continuing to exist with all the existing OT infrastructure you have already in place in your factories. So I would say that when we look into the wishes, the vision is great, but the challenges are also in the same size, right? So in a recent research that we conducted also with our customers, I would say that 51% of the respondents already mentioned that they are undergoing a huge digital transformation to enable their factories to be Industry 4.0 enabled, let's say. And 27% of them actually said that they already completed a major significant introduction of technologies to enable those things. And only 22% said that they're actually still planning such kind of digital transformation. So if we look into the market maturity, if you have not embraced into a digital transformation problem, you're probably already too late, right? And let's say the customers that have already onboarded on this journey, they see the challenges of dealing with new technologies, such as containerized applications, Kubernetes clusters, all these kind of things, and introducing that into an environment that maybe has been going for production for more than 20 years, right? So the big challenge here is how can you make this whole IT technology coming from Industry 4.0 and the OT, the operations technology coming from automation world, really work together in a very transparency way to give the information transparency and the power to make decentralized decisions that we expect when we are talking about Industry 4.0. And I guess that's a little bit the maturity. It really depends on the vertical. Some verticals, are more mature than others. But in general, I think all industrial players have already established their strategy to go for industrial IoT. And we really need to implement a strategy when we talk about having IT and OT systems playing together.
Thank you, Rafael. Actually, to continue that, and that was very interesting. I'm sure we'll talk about the challenges a bit more as we move. Lynn, I would like to move over to you and actually continue that line, ask about how do you see the roles of IT and OT evolving over time from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a critical realization because people from both sides don't realize that they're both are going to change. And what I think we're seeing is, I'll call it's a new version of IT, and honestly, a new version of OT. We'll call it edge IT for lack of a better term. But and some of the other issues that we see in these environments, obviously there's brittle aging infrastructure for networks, for platforms. And we'll talk about some of this, I think, when we get into more of the challenges and the risks. But the new IT is going to account for the differences that OT environments require. So the problem and the reason why so many people in the operation resist and avoid IT or the CIO is because they don't understand the requirements. They're honestly quite different from where IT has been with transaction processing and maintaining some of the business backend systems for the enterprise. Once IT, however, understands those requirements, the skills and the processes they bring are going to be critical to securing the operation, because we're seeing the operation being very vulnerable to attack. And again, some of this will come up over the course of this conversation. Definitely, the OT side needs to bring about what I'll call IT process mentality, and definitely security monitoring IT process from the CISO side of the house, no doubt about it. So there's going to be a new edge IT, and it's going to be IT processes accounting for OT requirements.
Thank you, Lynn. I would like to ask, actually, move to you, Irene, and ask it from a different angle, and ask, we often think about digital and technology solution as monolithic. In your opinion, what's wrong with this view, and what does it imply for the relationships between ecosystem partners and manufacturers? You're still mute. Oh, here we go.
Let me take myself off mute. Yeah, I think this is one of those. I have yet to see a single company that provides the full suite of hardware, software, and services needed to actually put these kind of systems into place. So what that means is you've got a group of vendors who have to come together, who each have a piece of that solution. And when we talk about complexity, this is where complexity really becomes significant for a manufacturer trying to actually adopt something. And what that means is that the vendors themselves have to become much better partners with each other, and to develop what I will call almost turnkey solutions. As we think about my colleagues have talked already about some of the security challenges, but when we think about where some of those security challenges come in, it's not just the security that I have to secure that system. I have to secure everything it touches, which means that I have to understand what it touches and who it touches along the way. And I think that unless we can start thinking about coalitions of companies developing solutions into the market, I think we're going to struggle significantly.
Thank you, Irene. That's very interesting. If already talking about security, Çağatay, I would like to know, how will cybersecurity affect the IoT market? Is it a bottleneck or an opportunity for the IoT market?
It can be both, actually. If you make the correct investments to the related domains that you have to manage its security, it can be an opportunity for you. Otherwise, it can easily be a huge bottleneck for your company, products, or services. I think in order to create a sustainable growth in IoT market, cybersecurity should not be a choice. Instead, it will be a must. But at the end, I believe opportunities will win, and the total IoT market will improve, because IoT security market itself will also create its own market size and economy. For example, in 2026, the IoT security market is being expected to reach approximately $40 billion market, with an approximately 22 year-over-year growth rate, and 25% of it is actually will come from the industrial IoT side.
Thank you, Çağatay. Staying on the cybersecurity side of the house, Alon, I would like to ask what, in terms of what are the regulations and standards for this market, if you can elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you, Doron. Actually, taking from all of the commentators so far, I agree with everything said. It's a challenging market. It evolves really fast, and it touches every aspect of our life. Now, it's a mix of very old age technologies and very new age technologies that actually being connected together via high connectivity networks, whether it is 5G private networks, the internet, the cloud, you name it. Now, I really can't pinpoint any clear regulations that is being commenced, but we see that in every Western country, every evolved country, the high, let's say, understanding of the maturity of cyber attacks and cyber threats to this domain, and we can take the Biden bill, for example, that talks about the rejuvenation of the basically entire infrastructure of the US, whether it is energy, water, food, you name it. And there is a clear case for cybersecurity in that area. We can see big infrastructure. I'm taking the infrastructure as a model, but we actually pinpoint to every pillar or every metric within the industrial IoT. We can see that there is a clear understanding from the government perspective and governments for the need for cybersecurity. It's not yet matured to a regulation, but there is a clear understanding of the need for it, and more than the need, the actual, let's say, intention to invest in cybersecurity to this domain.
Thank you, Alon. Moving forward, Arvind, I would like to ask you, after explaining some, we talked about standards and the cybersecurity and some of the challenges. Can you pinpoint a few common use uses for industrial IoT and kind of cover it from your point of view?
Yeah, happy to do that. I mean, one of the most common use cases we see is around just asset performance, right? So, and I'll speak from the industrial side of things. You know, how assets, heavy equipment, capital assets, how are they performing? Are they running? Can I predict unplanned downtimes? Can I predict throughput through these machines? Those are some of the most common use cases we see when applying, you know, IoT or digital type of solutions. And in even very small improvements in asset performance are, you know, big dollars, right? And so that's something that we see a lot of people trying to connect their most expensive or most critical assets and trying to understand, analyze performance, get visibility to the data itself, but then also apply things like closed loop machine learning and things to get sort of every piece of productivity that they can get out of that asset. So that's, I think, one of the biggest use cases we see. I think the second, you know, there's a lot of sort of process optimization that we see. So, you know, both hybrid and process customers, as they look at squeezing out a little, you know, getting their processes under control, not having big spikes in process variability or process variables, and really keeping that under tight control. You know, IoT can play a huge, because it's all about data and trying to optimize that data and keep it as close to the control as possible. So again, there, even a small 0.5%, 1% improvement is millions of dollars, right? And so that's, you know, how do you run your process more optimized and provide quality to the end customer is a big IoT capability. We see safety, you know, trying to predict safety issues from, you know, before they happen, you know, when certain thresholds are met from a safety aspect, you know, warning to operators to turn things down or shut things off. That's a great use case. We're seeing a lot of energy and sustainability pieces now, trying to track energy performance, water usage, waste across the process and the asset. And that's, again, sustainability is really making a very, very strong comeback. And sustainability in context of production, not by itself, but like how am I producing, this product? Energy intensity is becoming a key thing. And the last thing is making the human more productive. I think we forget the human in a lot of these IoT conversations, but at the end of the day, if you can provide the right type of information to the person that's running the asset or running the operation or process, give them the intelligence, augmented reality, things like that to make the human more productive. We are seeing a lot of those use cases as well, because we have to make sure that we keep the human at the center of any sort of transformation or IoT exercise.
Thank you, Arvind. I think you got everyone's attention by mentioning you talk about the saving millions of dollars in cost, and then talk about the energy crisis. I think our popularity just went up substantially. Absolutely, I think the energy and the talk about sustainability is major today for everyone in any market. I'll just point out before I move to Nishita that we're getting a lot of questions in the chat, so please, everyone, be a bit more patient. We'll move forward and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. But one feedback is that this is a very interesting discussion, and the audience has a lot of interest in what we're talking about. Last, Nishita, I would like to ask, in your view, from different angle actually, is the edge versus cloud debate concluded, settled? How do you see it from your point of view?
Well, I definitely hope it is. To be honest, it never should have been an either or debate. Let's step back a minute and talk about what is really the edge and what's the cloud. Because at the end of the day, whether you go with edge, whether you go with the cloud, you are using physical computers. So, the simplistic way of really differentiating between the two is where that computing exists physically. So, typically we classify the edge as more of the on-premise or closer to the source of the data, whereas the cloud is considered more, remote or external to your OT network. Now, there's definitely some gray areas to what I just said with the definitions, but for the sake of simplicity, let's go with this. Now this distinction matters because that's what informs some of the challenges and advantages of each type of computing. So, in the early days, we saw a lot of pitting one against the other, but the reality is that they both have very distinct roles to play, and can very much and should coexist in a good architecture. So, if we dig into a little bit about some of the attributes. So the biggest feature of edge computing is that it's so close to the source that is generating your data. So one of the biggest advantages is from a latency perspective, because you have the ability to generate insights from that data instantly in real time. And we've spoken a lot about security and the risks of security in this discussion, and edge usually doesn't generally depend on the internet, and it's more on premise or within your network. So that's very good from a security perspective, from an intellectual property, for sensitive information. Whereas if you talk about the cloud, you suddenly have so much processing power, and it's so great for those very intensive, heavy analyses. But it does have higher latency. You do get into some of the connectivity or security issues that we spoke about, which was an advantage with edge. So again, one of the other big things to consider is where you want your information available, because if you want it available everywhere, the cloud is generally where you want it to be. So as you can see, these are two very, very different approaches. And once you view it as an and or an and not an or, and you understand the advantages and disadvantages, and it's relatively easy to see why this shouldn't have been a debate, and that hopefully everyone's seeing that it's settled.
Thank you, Nishita. I think after those opening, and I think we'll talk more about the challenges, security challenges and latency. And I hope we're going even deeper now and to talk about some more challenges and threats and risk in industrial IoT. And we're starting right with let's go with the more difficult questions. Arvind, I'll start with you on this section. What are the main reasons for IoT project what are the main reasons where IoT projects don't succeed or achieve business or financial results looking into?
Yeah, it's nice that I get the difficult questions.
Yeah, I said, it won't be nice.
Yeah, no, and I just want to say I completely agree with Nishita's comment. It's edge and cloud. It's not edge or cloud. And so there shouldn't be a debate. The two should work together, and that's where real value can be gotten. But the main reasons, right? We see, I mean, if we keep it simple, the first thing we generally see is that either companies don't have a good strategy in place, or they don't understand the business case they're solving. So I personally don't think we have a technology problem. We have the technologies. Yes, they'll get better, etc. We have the technologies in place today to solve most problems. The problem is that we need to first identify the right business case. So look at your P&L, look at your income statement, figure out where your highest costs are, figure out what your bottlenecks are in your production lines, figure out how you can make more revenue, and then decide, okay, I have a really good use case where I can go make a difference in cost or revenue, because that's really what it comes down to. And then let me apply the right technology set. We see a lot of people applying technologies and doing science projects and just connecting data sources and bringing it to the cloud. Sure, we can do that. That's not something that has to be, you don't need to run a proof of concept for that. That can be done. It's been proven hundreds of times. The question is, what are you going to do now that you have it, right? So instead of trying to figure that out after you've done the technical proof of concept, it's better to figure out what am I trying to solve? Am I trying to get 10% more productivity? Am I going to trying to get 5% cost reduction in a certain area? And then you apply. So you need to do that upfront rigor on the business case side, so you know what your ROI is going to be. And then when you run your proof of concept, you're not just testing technology, but you're also testing against the benchmark versus did you achieve the improvement? Because if you achieve the improvement and you can measure it, then you can go make the case for more investment and you can scale your projects, right? So one of the first things, at least that I've seen, is that a lot of people are very interested in the technology and do all this due diligence on the technology without understanding what business problem they're actually trying to solve, right? And so that's one of the big reasons IoT things have failed. The other thing is that, and one of the other panelists said it, is that the OT environment has so many legacy systems. I have not come across a single customer that is willing to rip and replace everything and start from scratch. If you're building a greenfield site, great, let's do it right the first time. So you have to find ways to work with what is available, what you have, and then build on top. So at least we talk about it as wrap and extend. So you have the OT systems, nobody's going to spend millions and millions of dollars ripping up old technology. So you have to find ways to add value on top of what already exists. And I think that's where a lot of, at least some of our customers get stuck in trying to understand, how do I get data? How do I use existing systems? And then the last one, and this is very important, is the customer experience or the user experience. I think we design all these great systems, but then we forget the human, like I said, and if it's a really bad human user experience, the operator who's actually at the end of the day that makes or breaks whether your project's actually going to succeed is not going to use it. He or she will go use something else, or they'll go back to what they've been using for the last 15, 20 years, and now your project is not going to be successful. So I kind of summarize it in 3 things, right? Have a good business case and know that well, and know that you can measure it. Build on top of what you have. Don't try to rip and replace. And then make sure that the user experience of whatever system or technology that you're building is good enough that they will actually use the technology. That's how I classify it.
Thanks, Irene. I definitely agree on the business case that you started off with. Thank you for that. I think staying on more challenges, Irene, if we can come back to you, we've gone from digital skills gap to a labor shortage, which is something everyone is talking about, and especially I think coming out of COVID, which is still talked about. The labor shortage, I think around the world is the conversation. So, what does this mean for manufacturers in the short term and in the longer run?
So I think that before COVID, we were talking about this skills gap where I just didn't have enough digital skills and digital savvy in my workforce. And this was from the factory floor clear to the C-suite. I didn't understand how to deploy these systems. I didn't know what they could do for me. And someone mentioned, I think Arvind said, science projects. A lot of this really was about science projects. Now what we're talking about is, as I have to replace laborers who either have moved to different jobs or have left the sector completely or have retired, I'm dealing with multi-generational issues in terms of the workforce that I have, who all have very different perspectives and experience with digital technologies. But I'm also dealing with workers who don't have a lot of the process knowledge that the very experienced workers had before. And so if you look at international statistics, if you look at US statistics, the amount of uptake in robotics and automation systems has been unbelievable the last year. I think we've had 3 or 4 quarters of quarter-on-quarter growth, year-on-year growth, record sales. And so what we're finding is that we're replacing the workers who have left with automation systems, but we haven't necessarily rethought what those workers who are left should be or could be doing. And so I think there's an opportunity space here right now, even though it doesn't look like it, to really say, how do I make the workers who are remaining more strategic? How do I deploy automation and control systems, robotics, et cetera, AI systems? How do I deploy them in a way that augments the workers who remain? And how do I prepare workers for that augmentation so that they trust these systems as we move forward? And I think that that's a real opportunity that we're going to have to go back almost to the drawing board in some cases. We can't rip and replace, I would agree, but we do have to rethink some of our process flows and some of our workflows to take into account fewer workers, more automation, and different job roles and responsibilities.
Thank you. I'm actually, it's stuck in my mind what you said about one of the things we're looking at the workforce gap is remaining workforce, which was your phrase, remaining workforce, which means at least in the short term, we're not assuming that we'll get a bigger or larger workforce, but we need to find solutions to deal with the reality, let's call it. So
if you look at a lot of the statistics that are out right now about workforce, there's, I don't know, 2 million, 3 million, depending on which statistics you look at. There are going to be open jobs that we can't fill. And so we're going to have to find a way, if we want to keep production running, if we want to keep our outputs consistent and growing, we're going to have to find a way to replace that human input in some ways, and it's going to be automation.
Thank you.
Sure.
Nishita, I would like to talk, we talked about the business use case, and I would like to ask from your point of view, what are some of the challenges you see when you talk to customers about industrial IoT solutions?
Yeah, so, definitely agree with, what's being said before, especially some of Arvind's points that he made. And, so maybe I'll touch on, 4 strengths, the top 3 that come to my mind. So I will reiterate, one of the first realities that we as an industry understand is the state of the infrastructure that is in place today. We could be looking at infrastructure that is sometimes decades old, right? Not just a few years old. And it's a far cry from smart, and again, the other reality, again, as we said, is, it's not going to be replaced anytime soon. It was and a lot of challenges come with that. So, interoperability and connectivity in these situations is a really big challenge. So how do these different legacy products talk to each other? Because they weren't built with the intent to talk to each other. And in fact, they come from an era when open was definitely not a desirable thing in the industrial world, right? So when once you figure that out, you get into, okay, so how reliable is your network? And again, like I said, this is less of a challenge in the edge space, but as we mature with technologies and we can do more, the demand to distribute the results or the raw data of your edge computing and push that out of the edge, that increases significantly. And you'll find that facilities today, they have a lot of catching up to do when it comes to establishing repeatable, reliable, fast, secure connectivity. Another interesting one to talk about is, and this was also touched upon, is that sometimes there's this assumption that, end users come into conversations, knowing what they want, like, okay, we know what we want to do. We have all the time, we have the expertise to go make this happen. But truthfully, that just doesn't happen, right? They don't have the time or the skills to create these IoT solutions. And that's a big problem, because with skills, you can't just quickly change your entire workforce or, even find the right people who can apply these new skills to industrial applications. So what ends up happening is they'll probably use an integrator, or they'll hire some external expertise. But it isn't only about the initial setup. So you need to think about keeping it going. So think about this. What happens when you need, at some point in the future, need to add this one more module or one more feature? Who do you go to for that? Or something messes up, to be honest, I'm only half exaggerating here. What if that one person in your organization who spearheaded this entire thing, designed and implemented the solution, they leave? What do you do then? And so the last point that I will touch upon, I will keep to my 3, is repeatability. So, every application is different. And I'm not just talking about company to company or industry to industry. It's very possible to find material differences even within one facility, within a company. So, to start, you end up spending a lot of time, manually to build these solutions, and then find that it isn't necessarily repeatable or scalable when you want to add that somewhere else. And to add to that, if you start getting into more of those machine learning and training applications, and you want to use something that you've done and apply that elsewhere, you tend to also open up a host of data privacy, and ownership conversations that are still pretty gray areas today.
Thank you, Nishita. On that, I would like to move back to the cybersecurity side of the room, let's call it, and in the security area. And Çağatay, I would like to ask, in the IoT world, what are the biggest challenges and threats you see in create sustainable, secure ecosystem?
Actually, there are lots of them, but just I want to emphasize one of them: talent pool. For now, talent pool is the biggest challenge to create a sustainable, secure ecosystem. Since the demand for cybersecurity is increasing exponentially, it is not easy to find experts in this area. Even if you find, it is not easy to hire, to convince them to work for your company. even if you convince, even if you hire, it is not so easy to keep them in your company. So finding, hiring, and keeping is really very challenging. I mean, think about the mobile security, for example. In a mobile security, you should create a team or experts which has a deep expertise in both iOS Android native mobile development together with the cybersecurity expertise. I mean, following the OWASP top 10 mobile requirements and applying them in the related domain, etc. It is the same for embedded security, embedded Linux, and also some industrial IoT domains. So this is the biggest challenge. I can say this, Doron.
Thank you. We're definitely going back to the workforce. I think this is a major thing in our industry, and we'll definitely be dealing with that in the next few years. I see it from different angles, and obviously we read all the same data from the same research. Thank you. Lynn, if I can move over to you, I would like to ask, again on this from another angle, what's the biggest threat you see regarding OT cybersecurity?
Sure. So, I can't tell you how many environments I've gone into where we see networks that are big, flat, /24/16. There are brittle old networks and brittle old software platforms in so many of these environments that are very, very difficult to protect. And I think that the notion that we're never going to move OT over, these are immovable assets or immovable processes, I think is a little bit of honestly, I don't think it's true. I think you're going to see revolutions out there in some industries, depending on if the players in those industries can reap a huge advantage from not only securing their operations, but automating their operations in new and different ways than people could have anticipated. And unfortunately, it usually takes a new entrant to bring this home. But the threat right now, I've had customers who are running point of sale systems in retail environments, obviously homegrown MES systems, and one of my customers' most advanced carbon fiber processes were running on things like concurrent DOS and Windows XP. And the networks, when we come in and going back to the great points that I think Arvind made about IoT projects failing, the other issue we see is to do any of these new capabilities frequently requires complete end-to-end infrastructure, because no one has set themselves up with I'll call it a platform for on-premise operations edge type of software-defined functionality. And honestly, that really exacerbates the security issue that I see.
Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, I'll just point out that we're getting a lot of feedback on the things said in the chat. You can look while we're going. I think we're answering some of the things, and just a quick reminder that you can add questions to the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to that after the next section. While still talking about cybersecurity, Alon, I would like to go back to you and ask from your experience and what you see now in the market. What are the main threats you see facing us now and going into 2023 in this market?
Well, from an attacker perspective, I think an attacker is reviewing the attack surface and the ways to get in and manipulate the networks, aka the attack vectors. So if you got an interplay of, first of all, a culture or a motivation that is saying industry first, industrial first, we don't want to have cybersecurity solutions or stops in the industrial manufacturing or whatever the business logic is. Make sure that no matter what happens, our machines are still working. So the motivation of industry first, together with high connectivity and legacy technologies, is a wonderful attack surface. And Lynn mentioned the fact that the networks are flat and you can reach from any point to any point with basically no effort whatsoever. Now, when you look at it from the, let's say, threat perspective, you can see two main threat pillars. The first one is availability. The second one is data secrecy, privacy, or manipulation. Availability is mostly at the industrial, infrastructure, agriculture realms, where you are leveraging the capabilities via the connectivity and the IT that rules the OT to kill the productivity of these sectors. And data privacy and manipulation is around data-driven technologies like finance, financial technologies, and health. There you can see industrial IoT collecting a lot of data, and you want to keep that data close. So the threats there is actually data extortion and manipulation. So that's two areas that is being leveraged, but the attack surface is huge.
Thank you, Alon. And to complete this part, I would like to cover one more topic we haven't, I think, touched specifically yet with Rafael. If you can help us out with risks associated specifically to AI in the industry, I think it would be very interesting for us to hear.
Sure. I think when we are looking at risks applied to AI in the industry, what we actually have to think is not even in the cybersecurity area so much, but it's actually the risk of trying to apply AI without really understanding the implications of that, right? So people that are not so into think, oh, I get it, it's because you never get 100% accuracy, and so but that's actually not the point. I guess the point is, to be able to apply AI in the industry, you need to make sure it is really industrial grade. And by industrial grade, I mean it has to fulfill three main requirements. It has to be robust, reliable, and trustworthy. And when we look about those dimensions, most people don't really think about them when they're actually trying to apply AI in the industry. And so if we think about robustness, it's just being able to adapt to changes in the environment due to unforeseen circumstances. So when you apply, for example, AI to solve some of the use cases the colleagues here mentioned, so I think it was really interesting that Dr. Irene mentioned, AI can be a huge extension for replacing, lack of operators, for example, for visually inspecting a production line. But when the moment you apply it in an AI to replace that operator that was inspecting the product, how can you make sure that that AI is actually flexible enough and robust enough as a human being would be? Because if a human being, was trained to detect, hey, this product is malformed, not packaged right, or something is wrong with this product, they would also be able to see, hey, there's a screw inside my potato chip bag, right? While AI, you always have to think in advance. Of course, there are ways to protect for unseen data sets and all this kind of thing, but you have to be much more cautious when you're actually saying, I'm going to replace lack of operators by AI. You need to make sure first it's robust. Later, you also need to make sure it's reliable. So if you have, and reliable, it means it has to be reproducible a lot of times and give always the same output, no matter if the inputs are the same. So if you're talking about applying AI, for example, in pharmacy industry, how can we make sure that you're not going to get, randomly distributed outputs if a pill is correct or not, or if the production levels are correct or not, if you don't have reliable AI. And the last part about trustworthy, it's a big block of things, right? It involves data privacy, transparency, explainability, fairness, and making sure that AI is not biased. So when you look about trustworthy of AI, then it becomes a huge more risk that if you don't take into consideration those aspects, you're probably going to put an AI that will have issues with that you make a decision that you don't know really what's going on with, because you don't have no explainability about the models and all that. So I think AI as a technology already comes with a lot of risks that if you don't think it through and make sure that you're using industrial grade AI, you're actually already exposing yourself to a lot of more risks that by just simply replacing a human operator by AI, you wouldn't have in the first place, right? And then, of course, there are cybersecurity attack vectors that can also be applied to AI. But I think we are not even there yet. I think in the industry, we have to make sure that first we are ensuring that the AI we are putting there is not just, the easy peasy thing to say, hey, I detect that you're smiling, but actually you have to put thought on the AI you're applying to make sure it's industrial grade AI. And that when you make those replacements of, okay, now I can do much more visual inspection with this technology, that you're really taking carefully thoughts about how industrial grade your AI really is.
Thank you, Rafael. And I think this would be a good time after gives a bit of a hard time with the challenges to move over to where I'm guessing most of you feel comfortable is talking about solutions and approaches in the industry. And Çağatay, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you. If you can talk about what can be ways of creating such interoperable IoT ecosystem in a secure way.
Actually, interoperability will help the IoT market to grow exponentially. Maybe this may not be the case for an closed network for a factory environment, but in the consumer side or in the outside world, some of the consortiums like HCA, Home Connectivity Alliance, or Matter is trying to provide any app, any device concept. I mean, you will, the end customer will be able to control or monitor any IoT device from any other vendor's IoT mobile application. This will help consumers a lot, actually, and however, it will increase the attack surface also exponentially because the relationships will be diversified. Although this integration will be cloud-to-cloud integration, the risk will increase exponentially. And also this kind of relationship will also become true between IoT devices and energy service providers. Because of the energy crisis, I think the need for this will accelerate, and all IoT devices should securely communicate with energy service providers. So this also means another huge attack surface. All of these should be technically manageable if you consider all of this as a design parameter from scratch to you. But this means that in the coming future, it will not be enough to create a secure communication between one IoT endpoint and its related cloud service. These IoT endpoints will most probably need to communicate with more than one different endpoint securely. So it may need to embed more certificates into these devices. This will need additional hardware. This will need additional RAM, ROM, software. It is manageable, but creating an IoT security system, this should be considered, I think.
Thank you, Çağatay. I'll just point out we already have a few questions, and we'll get to them in a few minutes when we go through some of these solutions. Arvind, I would like to go back to you and ask, from your point of view, what are the critical pieces that need to be there for digital transformation to make it a successful one?
Yeah, like I think I've mentioned before, a strategy in place, which means, right, the resources, the leadership buy-in that says that, yes, this is something we're taking seriously. Having if it's a large company, obviously having a coordinated effort across multiple sites, picking the right, so start with strategy and leadership, sort of executive buy-in. The second one is go after the business use cases that, where you think that if the technology is successful, you will actually see a significant impact in your financials. I think Dr. Irene talked about picking an ecosystem. She's right. There isn't a single company that can solve everything, all the way from upfront consulting to services to hardware and software. I think there's an ecosystem need. So making sure that you pick the right ecosystem partners to work with you, understand what you can do internally versus what you should outsource. Not everything has to be done internally. And then measure baselines to make sure that you know what your current performance levels are and how much improvement you've gotten. And I'll go back to keeping the human at the center of the sort of the exercise, right? Making sure that the user experience for the frontline operators is really critical, right? Otherwise, doesn't matter how great the technology is. So I would say, I mean, each of those elements can be broken up into a lot of pieces, but at a high level, those are some of the elements that are needed for success.
Thank you, Arvind. To continue that, Nishita, I would like to ask you to see, first of all, if you agree with that and see from your point of view, are there other important considerations we need to take into account, think about when planning industrial IoT approaches, or how do you see it from your experience?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with everything that Arvind said. It's spot on. You know, some things that I might add or just build on to what he said is, you know, one of the important things is don't rush into it, right? So whether you're thinking of, you know, whether you're building out your strategy or whether you're getting buy-in, you know, it's very important to not only evaluate different solutions, but also how those solutions fit with your business needs, your organizational behaviors, your requirements, you know, and both today and tomorrow. So, you know, what works maybe for that oil and gas organization that, you know, you read that cool article, IoT article about, you know, that might not necessarily work for you if you're, let's say, a food and beverage manufacturer. And, you know, it goes down, it boils down to a lot of things. Like you might have different sensors, you know, data sources that matter to you. You know, you might have more distributed operations, less distributed operations. You know, so the devil is going to be in the details, and it's tempting to make a high level strategy and then, you know, go get down to it, get some quick wins. But, you know, thinking more about these practical things like interoperability, or like how is your data physically going to get from one place to another? You know, what holes are you introducing in your security practices? You know, all that's going to benefit in the long run. You know, another important aspect to consider is the, you know, early on is the scalability of your approach. So it's not something that you can leave for the future. So, you know, when you evaluate technologies, I think you usually should be asking for plans or options to scale. You know, ask for technology roadmaps, future plans. You know, consider what you need to add in the future. You know, would you need to talk to more things? You know, more locations. You know, add bulkier technology, like process more data. You know, technology doesn't necessarily scale linearly. So, you know, do you understand the costs that are associated, you know, as with scaling up the architecture that you've selected? And are you up for, or, you know, are you up for spending that money? Because all those things matter in the early stages, you know, not later when you've already made those decisions and put those plans in place. And the last thing I will leave the audience with, again, is very much an echo of what Arvind said, is that IIoT is not just about technology. So, you know, think about your people. Don't forget to include them, you know, their training needs, their ability to, you know, their adoption rates, their work streams. You know, all of these things really matter as you build out your plans. And again, as Arvind said, that's often a very overlooked but critical piece of that approach, you know, if you really want to succeed.
Thank you, Nishita. I think one thing in general is for the greater technological community is don't rush into it. I think we all need to remember that, especially on the technology side. From there, Irene, I'd like to get back to you and actually cover back which we started talking, I think, with Rafael before. When thinking about AI, what do you see as key barriers in adoption from your work with manufacturers?
So,
Yeah.
and this is not an Intel opinion or my personal opinion necessarily. We've actually done quite a bit of work. We've done studying the manufacturing sector for about 5 years, my colleague and I, with about 500 people from over 400 companies. So this is a compilation of what we're learning. The single biggest barrier to deploying AI is not, as Arvind and Nishita have said, it's not a technical barrier, it's a people barrier. And when we asked participants in our work to tell us what was really hindering them, they said it was trust. It was trust in the system. And if an AI system doesn't drive a change in action based upon the data you're presenting to people, then you've wasted a lot of money. So if you can't get humans who are remaining there to do things as the result of data that they're presented, then you're not going to get the return on investment that you want. You're not going to get the efficiencies, and you're certainly not going to get the effectiveness. And when we talked about trust, it was trust from everything. Do I understand how the algorithm arrives at this recommendation? Do I believe that the data that was used is actually the right data? Do I have a sense that the right AI algorithm was applied to the right problem? So there's a lot of mistrust among workers, among users of the technologies. And until we can get past that, and we have some design rules that people have given us, and the couple that I think might be useful here is, design for failure, but design for graceful failure, which for me was sort of an interesting concept. If I design for graceful failure, it means I have to have indicators along the way that this isn't maybe performing quite like you think it might be. So can I give feedback in a way that maybe developers aren't thinking about right now that would help people have more confidence in the outputs as they're going and in the process as it's going? So I think there are a lot of opportunities for us, once again, to think about where mistrust comes in and how we can avoid some of that in our communications and in some of our designs of these systems.
Thank you for that. I think especially on the trust side and what data goes into the AI, that's a big question that comes back again and again in many discussions. Staying on that topic actually is, Rafael, if you can also help us out. I think this, obviously we can talk about this for hours, but I'd really like to get your opinion about, again, if you can add about the challenges you see from your point of view and your experience in adoption of AI in the industry.
Yeah, I think Dr. Irene already framed it quite well, that for sure, one of the biggest challenges is really then the trust. And I think it complements also with what I mentioned regarding risks, right? So there are indeed so many places to get risks with adopting AI, that then trust is the major key factor, right? But I think there are also other challenges related to that. So trust is for sure one of the biggest ones. Not really understanding the use case you're applying AI to is also one big issue. And I think we come along for a long time to say, yeah, you know what, we need IoT because we need all this data in the cloud. And then when everything is up in the cloud, we're gonna actually figure out which AI use cases we'll do, right? And then from there, you're gonna get insights, and then AI will be revolutionizing your prediction. And I guess a lot of customers fall into that trap, and we also fall into that trap. I guess it was a overall learning for everybody that actually it's not like that. And actually, when you start designing an AI use case, it has to really be focused. You have to understand what is your use case, what data do you actually need to achieve that use case, and really figure out what is the reasoning behind the scenes. So whenever you can always try to train a model, but again, garbage in, garbage out, right? And especially how to get enough data that really represents the world. So when you're talking about AI, you're always talking about a limited representation of the world. And that is really tough. That's also a big challenge, right? So how much data is enough data to make sure that your AI is then robust enough and can gracefully fail when something goes wrong? right? And that's maybe the 1 million question, or even more, that most customers also have. So, hey, I have collected this data set for the past 5 years. Is that enough for my use case? I don't know. What is your use case? Is the data that you've collected even relevant for that use case? What insights can we really take out of that, right? So I think first, knowing your use case, knowing the physical process that you're actually analyzing with AI is a crucial point. And let's assume you got a use case, you know how to apply AI, you even got a brilliant algorithm to do that. Then it comes on the part of the trust that we just saw, and also how to keep AI operational in the shop floor. Because, I mean, I've seen thousands of times that you have now an AI algorithm doing process optimization. I think that was one of the use cases Arvind mentioned also. From the moment that your operators start to lose trust on that, he'll put it back to manual. He'll put it back to, ignore the output of the AI. And then all your business case, the marvelous business case, ROI calculations you did are just going out of the trash because nobody is really using that output. And then people will just see that the model got turned off maybe a few weeks later. So observability of AI models in production is a key factor to make sure that it's not AI, it's not just we put it, now it's running for 20 years. Like automation systems used to be like that, right? So you have a PLC, you did a full test of your solution, it will run for 20 years gracefully. AI is not like that. It needs constant monitoring. It's like a kid, right? You don't get them to learn things just by doing it once. They will ask you why many, many times. And only after you have run that, you still need to guide it and check it if it's really behaving well or not. So I think that is also a challenge, that we have to think that AI is definitely a trend, and I'm one of the biggest hopes that all these dreams of autonomous factories and all that, this will come to reality. But it will take time because we need to gain trust in AI. We need to know how to do this and to make it happen in a graceful way. And we also need to keep sure that we are looking continuously to what's going on there, and not just blindly trust that whatever is coming out of there is actually the truth. We need to keep in place observability and mechanisms to make sure that what is going on with AI can continue to be trusted.
Thank you, Rafai. I think one thing that comes to mind is, this is part of the solutions of the discussion. We are still talking a lot about the challenges, which just shows there's quite a lot of work still to be done, which is, I think fascinating for us as part of the industry, but a lot to think about that. Moving to Lynn, I would like, again, as we said, we're talking about solutions, and from me, how do you see it in terms of, if we talk about kind of outcome-based services, how do you see them evolving, in the near future or in the long term also?
Yeah, exactly. And great topics in discussion. I want you to notice people never go away in terms of how they differentiate your company, because people just start worrying about different things, right? How do I use AI? How do I address the differences between automation and manual process? It's still people. It's just people doing something different to add value. And on that note, right, the shortage of skills is likely going to be addressed by services. So more and more, you're going to see, especially in the areas of how do I secure this operation? How do I run all the new, I'll call it IT-like gear that is showing up at the edge in these operations? These are all services topics. And that's how scale will likely come about. You centralize the people who are doing the work, and you allow them to add value in much larger fan out, right? So in that case, we see a shift going on towards outcome-based services. And what I'm talking about there is many companies, we all have, I'll call it procurement best practices. We all have this notion of, I got best of breed here, here, and here. I put it together and make my operation work. Over time, as the shortage of people and as the issues around the technology evolution, and it's very fast, burden these companies, it becomes easier to say, instead of me, figuring out how to procure solutions from 10 different providers and make them work together, I shift the burden to the providers. I choose fewer providers and I ask them to do a higher percentage of that integration, and then put the risk on them by defining outcomes of, once they're delivering the service, this is what it means to me. This is, number of widgets per hour, or the service you're providing me is number of users who can access this same network, or number of threats that are dealt with, by you, not necessarily you just installing and running software on my behalf. So we're seeing a significant shift towards these outcomes. And I know if you turn the clock back a few years, GE was out there talking about outcomes like, we'll take a percentage of the savings we give you. That's impossible for procurement to understand and comprehend and deal with on a balance sheet. But it's not impossible to say, instead of, software cost per cores of CPU, maybe you give me a service cost to run this entire IT operation based on the number of users, or based on the number of systems that are under support. So we're going to see an evolution in this, and this is one of the areas that I think many industrial players are going to get craftier about, is how to define outcomes in a way that shifts the risk, but keeps the number of vendors maximized to allow them to auction off these opportunities.
Thank you, Lynn. And to wrap up this part of the discussion before we move over to questions, Alon, I'm coming back to you. From the cybersecurity side of the room again, can you share with us a few common best practices?
Yeah, so first of all, I just wanted to say that I never thought of AI as managing AI as a little child that is keep asking why, and Raphael just stated that point, and I think that's like, it made sense to me. So I just wanted to, add this comment. Today, common best practices is basically far from being trust, as Irene just stated, that is needed. They are non-intrusive best practices, means that we are going to track and monitor the network. We're going to find anomalies, and we're going to tell you there is an anomaly in the network. We found it. It was 2 days ago, and you have to do something with it. And this needs to be changed. I mean, if you want to do cybersecurity, first of all, you need to trust your systems, and you need to understand that the risk is real. And the funny thing is that there are no really new cybersecurity, let's say, insights on concepts. You just need to adopt what has been done to the IT, to the OT world. And, I'm gonna, just to name a few: device and users authentication, access control, governance, protocol filtration, communication and data encryption, policy enforcement, who can do what, secure remote access and administration. Most technicians today are doing the work remotely, and they don't connect securely. This is nuts. Software updates. First of all, we need software updates, and then we need it to be secured. Cryptography within the whole network, log collection and monitoring, and of course, secure compute environments. Once the applications and the business logic runs within the OT environment, this is part of your business logic of the business. So make sure it is secure and safe. Today, we are far from it, far. So it's an issue of trust.
Thank you, Alon. I'll move very, as this discussion can obviously be can go on for hours, and I myself have quite a lot of question about the AI part. I want to move really briefly because some of our panelists obviously have to continue. First of all, before I said, this was again very insightful, and we can obviously go in this for hours. I'll go really quickly into the question, and then we'll wrap it up. one thing that came, actually a lot of the questions were answered in the past half hour, especially on the measures for unsecured communications, we just discussed about. A quick question about IoT solutions. The question is, we mean elaborating data for complex and very often mission-critical processes. How do you see the adoption of confidential computing within such industrial IoT solutions? What is the perception from final users about this technology? If I'm guessing Alon can probably answer, but if there's anyone else who wants to take a shot at before Alon, I would love to hear your thoughts. Or we'll let Alon give a very, very brief answer. Again, I want to go through a few more questions, so if we can.
So confidential computing, the way Hub Security is doing that, and I'm going to refer to this one, is actually making sure that the execution environment is secured, meaning that you have a full governance of everything that goes in and out of the machine. Now, when you look at the network topology and the data that is being transferred and the communication between the devices, it's mainly about enforcement of who's talking to who and what parts of the protocols and the initiation between the machines are. So confidential compute can really make sure that what is going on in the network should be as defined and as worked. As one of the commentator just stated, it will work 20 years from now as it worked 20 years in the past. Confidential computing is making sure that what has been working so far is still working.
Thank you. Really briefly, if anyone wants to answer, but where to start? I think it's very generic, but where in the industry to start digital transformation. Where would companies look to start? I think it's a very generic question, but if anyone wants to take a very quick shot at that, I'm guessing the audience would love to hear.
Well, if I'll chime in then, if no one's going to take that one, I think where to start. People will say to start small, fail fast, learn, redeploy. At Intel, we've had more experience with the start fast, but then if you succeed, you end up with pockets of excellence that aren't connected in any way. So we have been advocating that you need to have in your mind what these kinds of solutions can do for your business, and from a strategic perspective, and then you can start small and fail fast and all of that. If you don't have a strategy in mind that you can modify over time, then everything looks like progress, even when it's not.
Thank you. That was actually to the point and very fast and very strategic.
I might chime in, just a little bit on that as well. I mean, I agree with Dr. Irene, is that, you want to start small. So, we talk about big data and little data. And, big data is for, the big things, that comes later. It's huge challenges to tackle. What you want to start with maybe is the little data. So getting to know or getting things, the small stuff out of your, your sensors, out of your environment or the factory. And if there's one place to really start, I would say start there. Start small, start with a little data, start with thinking which data really matters to you. Don't try to get everything and get a flood. That would be bad. Start small really is the way to go.
Perfect. I will take the questions and try to answer them offline. We have all of them here, and this is also recorded. So just don't miss anyone. First of all, I think the proof is in the pudding, and having everyone and having quite a lot of people stay with us for over an hour and a half shows how interesting this topic is. And I think there's much to talk about. For sure, I'm going to read a bit more on the labor gap and talk about the workforce and where the industry is going in AI. I think there's so many things we got covered today in a very interesting way, insightful way for our audience. I want to say thank you, first of all, personally, to all the our amazing speakers who took the time to join us today. Dr. Irene Petrick, thank you very much for joining us. Nishita, Palkar, Çağatay, I will get your last name right at one point, but Büyüktopçu. I will practice, I promise. Lynn, Nease, Rafael, Zedidi, thank you very much. And of course, Alon Saban, it was a pleasure to have you here, all of you, and hopefully see you again on one of our next discussions. I would like to say this is a recorded session. It will be live by beginning shortly on YouTube and LinkedIn and many other platforms.
Wonderful.
Feel free to approach any one of the speakers directly or ask questions to Hub Security on LinkedIn, on our website, hubsecurity.com, and any of our other channels. Thank you so much for everyone who's joining, for the audience, and again to the speakers. Thank you very much. It was a great discussion.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you all.